for all of your support last spring as we, as a community, as a school system, worked together to pass this historic bond. This evening, we're going to be walking through some of the bond projects, also talking about what engagement will look like around those projects. So I know this is a time that everyone's sort of been waiting for. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our Chief Operations Officer, Mr. Jordan Gordon, and then he will kick us off with our presentation for this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Collier. Thank you. Good evening, and again, thank you all for weathering the rain and the transition in weather. You'll have to forgive my voice a little bit. The weather got me as well. But we're going to jump right into this. We're excited to provide this real comprehensive update around the bond program. And really the highlights that we want to amplify throughout this presentation is really the approach, the strategy, and then what to expect as community members and stakeholders throughout the district. So as Dr. Collier mentioned, I'm Jordan Gordon, the Chief Operations Officer here at KCPS. And what you see before you is our bond partners. So these are all of our key partners that we are partnering with currently that's helping us plan, design, and execute the work. So as you see, you'll hear from our owner's rep, Navigate Building Solutions. You'll hear from Whitney Morgan, who's the Senior Project Manager. And then you'll also hear from representatives from our architect firms, DLR and Hollis Millers. Along with that, though, we have both our construction firms, McCown Gordon and J.E. Dunn, and the yellow box in the middle, that's Dr. John Mayo. He's our education consultant who's helping us with the educational specs and design planning aspect of it. But these are all at a high level, the partners that we're engaging with to do the work of producing quality buildings in a substantial timeline. So going down memory lane a little bit, identified needs. So as you all are very familiar with, based on our assessments that we completed last year, we were able to identify over $1.25 billion in needs. 650 of that were building repairs, infrastructure buildings, infrastructure items, and then the rest being the ESAs or learning environments. So going from a current condition, based on our building assessments that we conducted last year, KCPS, on average, our building score is 5.99, which is really not where we want to be, nor reflects the great things that are happening in our buildings despite our current conditions. Our goal is, throughout the execution of this bond program, we'll be able to reach a 7.39, which is substantially better, but it is not quite there, as you can imagine. So it just speaks to the ongoing work that will be happening in addition to the bond dollars that we're able to access, but then you'll also hear opportunities that we're using within our existing operating dollars to also do this work. So pre-bond investments. So knowing that we were going towards this great endeavor, we wanted to take the initiative to identify, out of the needs that we knew that were impacting teaching and learning and building conditions, what could we effectively improve in terms of our building conditions. So prior to the bond vote, KCPS, through ESSER dollars and additional operating dollars, aggregately invested over nearly $50 million in building repairs and renovations. The primary bulk of this went to HVAC repairs, broiler systems, and then also roof upgrades. So the phase one bond issuances, we wanted to highlight this here to really separate and distinguish between the two primary funding sources that we're using to capture these dollars. The general obligation bond is represented here. That first issuance that we have taken is for $60 million. And then the COP bond, Certificate of Participation, that is the funding mechanism that we are obligated to repay out of our operating dollars, but that was a total of $100 million. So the total cash that we have to go towards this initial phase one is $160 million. Important to note and keep this bookmarked throughout this presentation is once we take issuance of these dollars, there is a spend down requirement based on arbitrage, which is the IRS rules associated with this. So our goals to mitigate and circumvent those additional fees and penalties that come from the IRS associated with these dollars is to ensure that we're able to spend down and complete our projects within 3 years of start and completion. So that really affects our ability to determine how much we can do and how we prioritize where we start in this effort. Reporting, we'll hear a lot more about this from Nicole's team, but at a high level, just want to provide you with a myriad of different avenues that we're gonna ensure and be intentional about how we report status updates as the work gets underway. You'll see on our website, we'll have updated dashboards as projects begin to commence. You'll also hear monthly updates from our board meetings that we host right here at KCPS. In addition to that, there'll also be some local engagement within the school communities where we're providing strategic and timely updates to the community most impacted at that local school level. So our impact analysis, we went through a series of assessments to determine what impact at what level, based on the scope of work that's been identified for our schools, would have on teaching and learning, safety, site logistics, all those things. As you can see here, it's in red, yellow, and green. Based on the initial proposal that we led with, one of the immediate things that we realized is that, quite frankly, we could not prioritize and maintain continuity in teaching and learning at the schedule that we initially thought we could. So that has impacted us to the point that we had to reassess and reevaluate what, when, where, and how much of the work we can actively undertake, considering our bandwidth and considering the fact that we're planning to invest in all of our school buildings. So once we've gone through that, and what you'll see now throughout the phasing project is really what we've identified to be a manageable, comprehensive approach to this. This allows us to prioritize, number one, student safety, student and staff safety, but then also allows us to prioritize a reasonable effort to ensure that we can spend down those dollars within those 3-year timeline. So we're able to take on work in a way that we can execute it at a high level, ensuring that we're able to keep all stakeholders engaged and apprised of major things before they take place, but then most importantly, that we can complete that work on the time that we have identified. Water. All right, next up, you're gonna hear from our owner's representative. Corey from Navigate Building Solutions will come in and tell you what his role and his function as our owner's rep will be in the bond program.
Thank you, Jordan. Corey with Navigate, as Jordan just mentioned. We're just going to kind of walk through what is an owner's rep for Kansas City Public Schools and what are we actually working with you guys on your bond issue. So starting out, what do we do? We are just implementation and project management specialists. So we help walk through the process with you guys, help ensure parts keep moving. There's a good visual coming in the next slide because you're going to have multiple projects and multiple design teams, 2 design teams and 2 CM at risk, and create some continuity across those projects. Through this process, we need to continue and update and manage what we're moving forward. We're going to create standards that work through the district, help the district implement their standards, and create that consistency across their projects and that continuity. At the bottom here, something that's become a little more readily apparent for the school district is some emergency response, as there have been some issues that have come up. For instance, Carver here in the past few weeks, dealing with some electrical issues, and be able to respond to those and help bring that building back up online within the first 24 hours. This is just a quick visual. As I mentioned, there's on here we just showed 3 different projects. Each project does have a design team, has a CM at risk, and Navigate is just providing that continuity across all the projects and giving the district leadership a point to go to and to see for every project, or for all the projects. Ensuring compliance for your district has been a major task right now. We're starting with the procurement compliance, meeting the state statutes, meeting your guys' procurement policies in-house, the budget and the management, so capturing the budget across all these projects to filter up to one total project budget for the bond issue, not just the construction costs, but all the costs associated with the project, filtering those up and tracking those. creating documentation and reporting that will be presented to the board as needed, and doing that through also community engagement process. And then at the bottom here, project management during construction. So going out during the construction phase, walking on site, meeting with a contractor, helping check and make sure that stuff are meeting the design requirements, and they're being proactive to catch issues early on, to schedule items or to implement changes that the owner may find through the process. Next up, we have Whitney.
Thank you, Corey. Good evening, everybody. Good evening, everybody. Y'all got some free food and y'all can't speak? How y'all doing? Whitney Morgan. I'm a senior project manager with the district. You may have seen me in your local neighborhood meeting. You may have seen me walking through your schools randomly this summer, doing those assessments, helping with the architects that Jordan alluded to earlier. But I'm going to talk to you now about targeted and district-wide investments. So the projects themselves, probably what a lot of you all are looking forward to hearing about. So this slide may be familiar. It's something that we utilize throughout the bond engagement process in terms of making sure that you understand that we're taking a phased and multifaceted approach to investing in our schools. So we want to do it the right and correct way. We want to be good stewards of the bond funds. So targeted investments, those are specific projects on a major scale and a high impact. So that'll be, for example, if you've driven by 42nd in Indiana anytime soon, the new King Empowerment Campus. So that's under active construction right now as we speak. That's what you would call a targeted investment. So that's going to be a new elementary school, a new early childhood learning center, and what you would call a family empowerment center, which our partners at Hollis & Miller will go over shortly. District-wide investment is more broad throughout the district, so you may have heard our tagline throughout the GEO bond engagement that every school will get at least $5 million. That is still accurate. That is still happening. So making sure that we improve windows, lights, flooring, roofing projects, all those projects that are not fun but are needed, we want to make sure that all of our schools are benefit from this bond initiative. This particular slide right here indicates our school profile sheet. So working with our communications department, each school will have something similar to this on their school's website that principals will be able to pass out at principal meetings and parent meetings and things like that. So basically what you're going to find is what's the school? How much investment are they receiving for that particular phase? When do they anticipate construction? What are the scopes of work, meaning what projects are happening at your particular school? And who to contact from the district. So more than likely, you're going to see my name in the bottom of all of these in terms of if you have questions regarding what projects are happening at your school, you can call or email me. I'm happy to get you the answer if I don't know immediately. So as Jordan indicated, he was talking about the fiscal phased approach that we're taking to make sure that we're good stewards of the bond money. But also, we have a construction phased approach in terms of making sure that we're planning out the construction of each project properly in alignment. So why does that matter? We're a school district. We have to make sure that school is always in operation, and our goal is not to impact or minimize impact to teaching and learning and safety and security. The projects that you see in phase one, we anticipate construction starting in 2026. And so our communications team is going to be talking about the engagement efforts that we're going to be working with you all moving forward here shortly. But we want to show you that it's important to phase construction for this many schools and for this many projects for a multitude of reasons. We're working with our construction vendors and our architecture vendors. They only have so many partners they work with in terms of a certain time period, a lot of projects during that time. We want to make sure that we're putting a certain amount of projects before the city of Kansas City within a certain time frame, because we have to apply for permits, for inspections. We have to bid out different projects, and that takes a long time. Sometimes we have to order materials and equipment. So that's important to note for all of these projects in terms of why we phased them. We also utilized our BCA and our ESA assessments to determine which projects to phase and which approach. But this will be indicated on the website as well in terms of which projects are happening when and how much to anticipate. So, believe it or not, we were listening during the bond engagement in terms of Whether you got a survey from us, if you saw us at a staff lunch and learn, if we were in your school building speaking on the mic just like this about the bond prior to the bond, we were asking you all about your priorities, and focus areas in terms of where should we focus the bond initiative and the bond investment. So for example, Central High School, we discussed with the feedback that we received from you all is that restrooms, collaboration spaces, improvements to the interior look and feel of the building, gym improvements, of course, secure entry. Those are the priority items that you all indicated from the surveys, the feedback, the forms that we received. So we are planning renovations this upcoming summer and the next summer as well in the phased approach for Central High School, as well as the CTE addition. But the renovations for Central, we are already planning a new security vestibule, new restrooms, interior finish upgrades. So what does that mean? Flooring, new paint, new walls, things like that. Updates to the bleachers as well. So making sure that we're including the feedback that we receive from you all within the planned projects to show the transparency and accountability that we talked to you all about prior to the bond vote. Another example, manual CTE program. So many of you may be aware that that program is planned to move to Central High School, but at that particular time, we received feedback from you all about incorporating collaboration spaces, learning on display classrooms, new updates to the look and feel of the building, secure entry. You'll see a lot of patterns and similarities throughout this feedback because a lot of our buildings need the same things. So for the CTE addition, obviously we're still in the very early stages of the planning and design of that building, but we're already incorporating new learning spaces, updating the furniture, the equipment, and making sure that that building looks like a new CTE space that students will want to attend. So at this particular time, I'm going to bring up Sandy Cochran, who is part of our Hollis & Miller design team, to talk about a few things as well.
Good evening. Thank you, Whitney. I am one of two design partners, Sandy Cochran with Hollis & Miller, and I'm here to talk to you just a little bit about design process and what that means. So we get to do the fun part. We get to pick colors, design buildings, and we get to engage with you all as community members as well as staff members with KCPS staff, teachers, principals, building leaders, and leadership. And so we start at the very beginning, but at the top of that is what Jordan and Whitney already hit on, which was budget. We have a budget for every single project we work on. We have a schedule, and then we have to talk about the program. So if we're building a new building or we are doing a renovation, there's a program associated with that, which tells us how much work we can take on for each site, depending on what that budget can support. So throughout this process, we start with visual and visioning programming. That's where we start to put boxes on a sheet. We put it in front of people and say, what do you think? We touch X amount of offices or classrooms. We do X amount of scope. As Whitney mentioned, we're doing flooring, paint, lighting, etc. How much work are we actually going to do within a building? That is where that is all established. And from there, we move into schematic design. That's when we start to really talk about what is the full comprehension that's going to encompass this building. Are we going to do new signage? Are we changing a population? For instance, Carver Melcher, they're moving into new buildings, which means those buildings they're moving into have to embody the community and the students that are going to be utilizing those spaces. As we shift into design development, that's when that design becomes more specific. We'll pick the actual carpet, the real tile that goes into a restroom. If we're updating and we're taking down walls, that design, those design components have been established by that phase. And throughout this entire process, we are engaging with those construction manager partners to make sure that we're hitting budgets. And so if we need to scale back or we need to add during these design phases, those are actively happening. From those points, we move into construction documents, and that's what everyone knows as blueprints. That's what we're creating during that time. We're doing details. We're working with our partners as far as engineers, structural, mechanical, civil, if there's site work that needs to be done, to make sure that all of their details are being incorporated as well. And then those documents is what we turn over to the construction team to actually build or renovate a space. As they are bidding those out to partners in the community, creating jobs and labor forces that bring them on board, then we shift into construction administration. And during those phases, we are actively working with the KCPS staff, the construction management team, architects, engineers, to make sure that we are hitting budget and schedule at the same time, and we're keeping up with the designs that were presented to this community of what we're going to execute at the end of the day. And then from there, we're closing the project. Hopefully from there, everyone is starting to see shovels in the ground or lights being changed out within spaces. Kids are coming back on the first day of school after a summer, and they see brand new renovated spaces within their buildings. And so that's what we look for when a project is successfully executed. So during design, one of the biggest things that we try to hit on is asking questions. We can come in and we can change out a classroom, we can redo technology, paint, floor, but we want to ask the questions, as Whitney said, during those surveys, what's important? So everyone said collaboration spaces. Well, what does that mean? So we start to ask specific questions as far as what is happening in collaboration, what is happening within the community, and how can those spaces make sure that they are supporting those? Because part of renovating or building a new building, it has to be a tailored solution for that community, otherwise it's not successful. So this is just some of the components that we start to ask about as we're working through design elements. And I'm just going to stop real quickly. As Whitney mentioned, the King Empowerment Campus is currently under construction. We're very excited about this brand new building. It was the Mary Harmon Weeks in King Elementary that was shut down about a decade ago, and those kiddos were moved into the KCMSA building, and that is where they're being housed currently, and they have a new building that they will be moving into late next year, early 27 is when that is planned. So as Whitney mentioned, there's 3 components to that building: a new elementary, an early childhood center, and a family empowerment center, which is a new location for services that are being supported through KCPS. Very large site here. The rendering on the left-hand side that you're viewing is the bus entry that those kids will see when they get off the bus. They'll be able to enter in on the left-hand side, and then that's their cafeteria with lots of natural light that's shining in. We're also calling it a commons because it'll be a multi-use space. And in the elementary school is being named after Dr. Martin Luther King, and so there will be graphics that will show up on the exterior that are highlighting his namesake. And then Shelley from DLR.
So fun to see these projects come to fruition. My name is Shelley, and I am an architect and project manager at DLR Group. Both Hollis Miller and DLR Group have very robust teams that do education primarily. So all of us architects and designers have chosen to be in this line of work because we really care about public education and what it means for the kids. We feel like we have a little bit of sway in creating great education spaces for kiddos. See if I can make this work. Okay, so I don't want to repeat anything that Sandy has said because this is very similar. A lot of architecture firms use the same approach design-wise. We basically have the same kind of thing. In the very beginning, you're in pre-design phase, which is our discovery phase. That's when we're learning and taking in as much information as we can from you. And all of those surveys that were talked about, that starts us. That helps us a great deal, but we still sit down with people and talk and learn about the buildings themselves. And there's just a lot of research to be done in the very beginning of this. Schematic design is really considered this envision part of the project, where it's where you dream big and you think of the great things that can happen in your school. And then when you get into design development, you're starting to think more realistically. You're looking at budgets. You're talking to your engineers, and they're saying what's possible. So you're starting to turn it into a reality, and that's the conceptualize part of the project. And then we're delivering, and like Sandy said, that's when you're putting together those big drawings that are considered the blueprints that really instruct the contractor on how it gets built, how it gets priced, and how the building comes to a fully executed building. Construction administration, same thing that Sandy said. We're just monitoring construction and troubleshooting anything that comes up. And In our case, we have a lot of renovations on our drawing boards right now. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the things that we do specific when we're working on a renovation. I know a lot of you are probably have kids or you're working in older buildings that haven't had a lot of work done on them in quite a while. So that's what we have on our plates. So under that pre-design phase, we are studying the building's history. Some of that plays into how we design as we move forward. We want to pull those stories through and honor them if they're worth being honored, and then get rid of them if they're not. So we also try to find the original construction documents. There's a lot to be learned from those. We can't always x-ray into a working school and find out what's behind the walls. So these documents really help us to determine how the buildings have been built in the past. We get into the buildings, we walk them, we see what's been done, the additions that have been made over the years, and we learn a lot when we just get boots on the ground and walk the buildings. So when we get into schematic design and we're working on a renovation, we will develop a design approach. I'm sure you've had this discussion when you've seen buildings that have historic values to them. Sometimes people like to replicate exactly what the historic look is. Sometimes you want to see the new architecture complemented. And then sometimes you want to see a whole different approach that totally goes away from the older construction. And so we have those discussions as we move forward, especially because a lot of your buildings have some historic aspects to them. In design development, we're basically we're adding in the educational component of it. We're looking at the spaces that exist, and we're imagining how they will work in modern education. You have technologies that you teach with now that didn't exist 60 years ago. So we want to make sure that you can teach in a modern way, but in an older building. So we're going to help make that happen if we can. Getting into CDs, again, that's where we're building the blueprints. We try to find those feasible solutions to current code problems. Now, the codes do help us a little bit. There's a special code for existing buildings. It gives us a little bit of leniency when it comes to modern codes. But we still have to make sure that students of all types and all capabilities can use your facilities. So we work hard at that as well. And like I said before, with the new technologies and building systems, we want to make warm, safe, dry has been a real emphasis on these renovations. So we want to make sure you are in comfortable spaces. When it's summer, you want to be cool, and when it's in the winter, you want to be warm. And so we're going to try to make that happen to the best of our ability, even in these old buildings. So then during construction, there's a lot of very delicate work that might need to be done, especially on a historic building. And so we are making sure that all of the, the exteriors especially, will be touched very lightly and in special ways that help enhance the history so that it can shine. So next up is Nicole.
All right, I know we've been talking at you for about 30 minutes. I'm your last presenter, I promise, and then we'll open it up for questions. So hopefully you've been taking notes, you have your questions written down, because we'll have folks come back up and be able to answer specific questions if you have them. So everyone's favorite topic, communications and engagement. So just as kind of a reminder, these are really the objectives of why we do strategic bond engagement and what was included in the plan. A lot of this really is for transparency and accountability for the district. We need to make sure we're honoring all of our commitments to you. We need to create opportunities for school communities to provide additional feedback, especially as we're refining scopes. Inform our stakeholders. You all gleefully voted for this. And so now that we're implementing, we want to make sure you know what you voted for is actually happening. Build community support and partnership. We built a lot of really strong bonds and support over the past 2 years doing this bond work. And so we want to make sure we maintain those positive relationships and then build stronger relationships with the community and with stakeholders, especially those who don't maybe have kids in the district but still support us and want to see us do good work. All right, so this is where you come in. A lot of folks have asked questions of, okay, when do we get to engage? When do we get to find out what's happening in our buildings? Where do we fit in? So this kind of outlines, it kind of marries up to what the architects put into play, right? So engagement. So a lot of this started about a year ago when we were looking at what do you want to see in your building? What's working, what's not working? You filled out a lot of those surveys to say, I hate my playground, I hate my auditorium. Please include this as you're deciding the scope of each project for the schools. So that's where a lot of the engagement started, was in that visioning, visual program design. So we're sort of right now in the middle of like PD and SD, right? We're getting into that like design phase. So what we're promising is we're gonna come back to the schools, and I believe at the end of this month, our engineering and architect friends are gonna finish all the scopes for every single building. So you have to remember, we voted on this in April. We didn't really have a full schematic design of everything yet, right? So they've spent the past couple of months really looking at the budget, looking at building design, and then filling out what is the scope for each building. So, and taking in all of our feedback with that. So we're gonna come back to all of the schools and say, hey, this is what we've come up with based upon your feedback, based upon our refined scope, and then biggest of all, based upon that budget. Every school is different because every school has different projects. Every school has different designs and needs and requests. So a lot of that engagement part is gonna happen right before the project because we have to have time to refine a lot of the scopes. And then if you look at Inform, we're informing you all the way to the very end. So even after the cake is baked, we're gonna tell you it's rising, it smells good, it looks good, and then you'll be able to cut into it and have a fabulous brand new space. Thank you for laughing in the back, Jordan, I appreciate that. All right, so as you know, we have two different types of projects for our schools. You have kind of those district-wide projects that are getting at least the minimum of $5 million, maybe nothing crazy, we're not adding a wing, but you are getting some renovated academic spaces and some other fun projects. So for those sites, you get two things. We're gonna do kind of a design phase, which is where there's a public meeting, there's some staff engagement, we'll come back to you and say, hey, we're getting ready to start construction on your site in a couple of months, here's the scope we have. How does that look? How does that feel to you? And then here's some spaces we think you definitely can shape and move and give additional feedback on. And then we're actually gonna do some budget prioritizing, our favorite thing, because as you know, a lot of our schools had over, $12 million, $15 million, but not every school got that allotment. So if you're a school that has $12 million worth of needs, but you only received $5 million, the district is probably gonna come in and say, hey, we have to update some of these building envelope needs. We have to do that for the safety and security of the kids. But there's a remaining $2 million. We think you could come in and tell us, you want the playground, you want the mural, you want new chairs in the front, and that's where that budget priority is gonna happen. We're gonna say, hey, you got $2 million to play with, tell us how you want us to spend it, and then you can kind of finalize some of those scopes. The second thing is gonna be that pre-construction informational meeting. We're gonna say, hey, here's the finalized scope. The builders are coming in 2 weeks. Here's what you can expect. You can ask all your questions about safety, any impact as you drive, on the site, all of those questions to that construction team. That's gonna be at that pre-construction informational meeting. We want everyone to know potential impact on you, your child, the building, as you see stuff happening on each campus. Next is gonna be that targeted project. So like the CTE creation or Hill Cook, like there are other projects that are kind of getting that extensive build. And so for that, we're gonna do a couple of things. First, we're creating a design advisory team for all of our targeted projects. What is that? So for that, we're gonna have about 10 to 15 members from the school community. Of course, the school principal, we'll have instructional staff, students for our secondary, parents, community members. We'll have a couple of members really meeting with us consistently throughout the process to help make sure we're aligning with the scope of work that we've outlined and the needs of those families that are at that building. So the applications for this are gonna go live in November. So if you attend a targeted site, and that is listed on that phased list that Whitney, I think, presented earlier, you can kind of see if you're a targeted site. You'll be able to apply to join the design advisory team, so you can give additional feedback. And if you're someone that's really, really engaged and you wanna go to every SAC meeting from here until your building's done and provide updates, fabulous, we would love it. But that's just an additional way for you to have insight, to engage, but then also share information with your school community. And then you'll have, of course, the design phase where you'll come back in, we'll We'll talk about scope. We'll give areas where we need some feedback, where there's some flexibility in design, patterns, colors, all that good stuff. And then the budget prioritization survey. And then last but not least, that pre-construction information meeting. So looking at phase one, because I know there are a lot of schools in phase one that are like, I haven't seen you. Where are you? What's happening? What's going on? So here's what's happening, my friends. November and December, we're working with the following schools. So we actually have a meeting already set up with Hale Cook in November after their PTA meeting. We're doing some surveys, and we're gonna meet and do some lunch and learns with AC Prep, Knott's and Anderson, and then have some additional community support with Manual Tech. We'll open all of the design advisory team applications. So even if, let's say you're a phase 3 school, but you know you're a targeted site, you can still apply. And that way you can get your name out there, make sure you filled it out and you're on the list. From January to March, we're gonna start doing those phase 1 engagement meetings that I kind of talked about, where you'll look at design, you'll look at budget priorities. So we're working with Phillips, Pitcher, Borderstar, Melcher, Carver, Gladstone, and Central High School. All right, and then there's the Bond Oversight Committee. So you may remember we kind of talked about this as we were working on the bond and passing it. Having kind of a board of community members that are helping with oversight, they'll partner strategically with our school board. So I think we had over 40 applications. It was open from August 13th to September 30th. So right now our board is reviewing all of those applications, making their selections. The goal is to have them in place by December. They have their first meeting in January, and then they would report out just on things that are going on with the district. And there's kind of more information on this if you're interested in what was the selection process, who could apply, what does it count for, on our website. And then general communication. So how would just the random person in Kansas City know what's going on in the district? First, we're gonna update those site profiles. I think Whitney kind of talked about that, but making sure every site, as their scope gets refined, as their projects get refined, that information is available on the website for any average person to see. I think a couple months ago, we did a wonderful bond update video where Jordan was up here talking, doing all the things. We'll do another one so people understand brand new phasing, answer any FAQ questions. We'll talk about the design advisory team, and people have additional information on what's happening right now with the bond. We'll keep updating that bond website, and then of course the general KCPS communication channels will send all of this information out. Okay, again, that was a lot. I invite presenters back up near the front if you would like, and we can open it up for questions. Yeah, make your way, because I don't know your sections, so make your way. And if you have a question, just raise your hand. We'll pass you the mic so that we can answer. You're gonna take that one? Perfect. All right, come in here, and then I saw another hand in the back. There you go.
So I understand, and I could be wrong, but I understand that some of the buildings will basically, they'll basically be replaced by different buildings, right? So what is the plan for those existing buildings that will no longer have students in them?
So can you repeat that?
So the
initial part?
buildings that will be replaced by other facilities,
Okay.
like Manual Tech, for example, what's going to happen
yeah.
to that existing structure?
So those existing buildings, like a Manual Tech, like a Melcher, they'll go through our repurposing process, where we'll engage the community around potential reuse options for that building, and then also look at putting out bid solicitation to see what interest would be for potential reuse. So that would all go through the Office of Repurposing.
So this question's actually for you in communications.
Yes, ma'am.
I work in the building of a phase 3, and so we wouldn't have expected any surveys yet to have come through. When should we?
So you haven't had one recently. We did them last year when we were doing the 10-year capital plan. So that's when we sent out surveys to all of the schools to say, hey, help us understand and prioritize the needs in your building. So that would have been conducted about a year ago, but you will get a new one closer to when your phase starts about, okay, so here's the refined scope. Here's what we heard initially. Does this make sense? Does this track? And so you'll get it at that point in time.
For the phase one schools, the 2026 calendar year, are we talking about summer of 2026? Just because 2026 is around the corner, is that what we're talking about when we talk about construction commencing, or do you anticipate projects happening prior to that?
Summer of 2026 would be that, which would allow us the opportunity. I think there's a meeting scheduled for like Hell Cook in November, and then those first phase right after the holidays for those district-wide sites that would be for summer's construction. And another thing about the district-wide investments, those projects will be phased over multiple summers. So the first phase of it, the scopes and the bid packages that will go out, we'll do infrastructure as a primary first, but then you'll also get some things like a secured entry, lighting fixtures, some paint, those kinds of things. So those district-wide, even though it says summer of 2026, they'll be broken over 2 to 3 summers.
Hi, I just want to confirm that I heard that the Bond Oversight Committee selection will be completed by December the 1st.
Yes, I think that is December? Mid-December.
Okay. And can you just briefly clarify what their main role will be?
Yes. We got Shannon in the back who's going to tell us. Shannon's head.
She's managing the Bond Oversight Committee.
Hi, everyone. Shannon Jacks. For the Bond Oversight Committee, the goal is because we haven't had GO bonds approved, we wanted to go that extra step with the community so that there was an additional layer of oversight and transparency. So that committee will be reviewing how funds are spent, ensuring that they're spent in accordance with the election language. Thank you.
Ballot language.
Ballot language. And then reporting out to the community, to the board annually, and to the larger community, so that they see anything of we're not fulfilling those commitments, either with how things are spent or scheduling. They will be reporting out on that.
Hi, I'm working over at Knott's, and we have a twofold issue in my building. We are going to be relocated to a different site, but our building is going to have work done on it to prepare for a different school to come in and take over that space. At what point in time will we be moved out of our building? Will we get to stay in our building until our new site is ready? Or are we gonna have to relocate because you're working on that site and our building during that same phase? Because the other school is also in the same phase with us.
Yeah, so in your scenario, there is a bit of a trinity effect, almost like a domino effect between your school, where you're going, who's coming in your school. So what we are planning to do, we have pushed your school back from the initial phase from our earlier conversation, just to allow the time for the logistical planning for that. So in terms of intermediate transition, yes, there's a strong possibility that depending on the scope of work that's identified to come in, there may be a need to move, but if we can isolate that to just summers at Knott's, for example, right now, then there would be no impact to teachers and staff. We could do it outside of the school year.
And will we know that when you guys come and meet with us in November or December
Yes.
this year?
Yes.
Thank
You will know, in your case, you'll know what our updated recommendation are, even though we've had conversations around that. We'll present that to the full staff and then take feedback around that, but that will also include an anticipated logistical start date and completion date of the work. So any impact to moving and the construction schedule will also be accompanied in that meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tracy Pruitt.
Well, and that does bring up a really good note. So the phasing, it is subject to change because, as you know, construction does change and things can impact. And if they have to make adjustments or push things back to cushion the schedule so it's more convenient for another group or so we're not impeding education that's taking place, that might happen. So we might have to send out another round of communication of like, hey, we've pushed you back just by a couple of months just to make sure there's limited impact on whatever is happening in the building.
Ms.
Sorry. Yep. I have another date question. So just so I understand, so phase one is looking like to start summer of 26, but you were saying it could continue over 3 summers.
Yes.
Okay. And then phase 2, is there a ballpark date for phase 2 and phase 3 to start actual seeing projects happening?
So the work for the construction part, and that's also another thing, when we say start date, there's two parts, the design and the actual construction part. So for a phase 2 project, you may see design work depending on if it's a targeted school. You might see that work starting in 26 because of the level of investment that's taking place, but the construction work would more than likely start in 27. But what we would do in that case, and we can actually update the website, the district website, so there's a little bit more clarity around when the construction will start for each one of those future projects. We can put an anticipated construction start date on that. But to answer you directly would be 27 before you would see any work starting.
Yeah, I just think from that communications, the number one asked question is, when are my eyes going to see something happening?
Yeah, great point. Thank you.
Thanks. Mine's related to that because I see in phase 2, there's a lot of the targeted projects that are pretty substantial. And so in thinking about these design advisory teams, it seems like some of that work and meeting and stakeholder engagement I would anticipate happening pretty soon. So I just wanted to get some clarification on expectations for that.
That's
too.
why they go live in November, because for a lot of them, it's going to take some time for us to really get feedback. So yes, they're going to go live in November. We'll start working with principals and our internal team on selecting folks. But then, yeah, we would kind of quickly start that hustle and bustle of getting them on board, starting to meet with this wonderful team here and getting that feedback.
And then also for the phasing, you said that for the scope, that the scope for each building has been developed. So that means all the buildings or just phase 1?
Point of clarification, that was district-wide scopes. So district-wide projects for our phase 1 are the ones that we did the scope validations, which all these great partners walked through the buildings over. So for all buildings, no, we still have a ways to go, especially depending on where you fall in phase 2 and phase 3. But considering the bond passed in April, this has been a fast-moving car to get consensus and validation around needs and prioritization of work based on the budget. So the team was charged with going through and doing a scope validation throughout the summer while the buildings were empty, making sure that tuck pointing is accurate, make sure that if we have leaks or if we have other structural issues that they were identified in the original building assessment to incorporate in what will be the final scope. So that was limited to the district-wide of the phase 1.
Hi, I wanted to know about the impacts. You know, you have the original impact analysis from November, and then you have an improved impact analysis from March 2025. Can you talk a little bit about what that actually means for kids in classrooms?
Yes, so the original part is what we were looking at is when we talk about impact, we're talking about just noise impact from the work that will be happening on site. We're talking about site logistics. Are we now needing to close a bus line and route kids to an alternative entry point? And then in some cases, how much scope or how much work can we complete outside of the natural school day? So to avoid shutting down bathrooms, to avoid collapsing and consolidating classroom, those are the things that we were trying to assess and prioritize as it relates to impact. Our goal is to ensure that during the scheduled school day, that school looks and feels as much as normal as it can without, active work happening on the roof or, a classroom next door having drills and construction workers coming in and out of the school throughout the day. There may still be some site work occurring, whether it's outside, tuck pointing, grading, those kinds of things that we can safely do without any audio and visual disruption to school. So those are how we prioritize the impact.
And so from this March diagram, it looks like it's going to be very little impact. Is that right?
Yes, very little severe impact on that. And then keep in mind that in all scenarios where in our buildings based on the conditions, once we start work, there's inevitably something that comes up. we'll work diligently to make sure that we're responsive to that, to clear those hurdles so that students and staff can have access to their school and their environments as much as they can. But that is our anticipation, that it would be very little impact to the teaching and learning, which also is largest impact is to the schedule, which is why we had to extend the work or sometimes maximize the days that we had no school. So whether it's winter breaks, whether it's Thanksgiving break, spring break, summer breaks, those kinds of things. So it in fact pushed out projects longer than originally anticipated.
And then one more question. You had talked about the penalty there, that this work has to be done in 3 years. So what happens if that is not met?
So that's more of a finance question. I won't deer too much in there. Our CFO's back there staring at me like, I dare you to say my name. So I'm gonna say Aaron, but really the IRS is called arbitrage. There's a tax penalty that's imposed on us if we do not spend. Because these dollars are tax-free, we also have an opportunity to earn off of the yield that we're drawing from that. So there's a cap. The IRS intentionally puts a cap on how much we can earn in investment earnings on these projects. So they require us, I think, 85% within 3 years.
85% obligated within 3 years, the construction. So if we don't meet that, the IRS will step in and said, because they're tax-free bonds, we're going to earn investment income on those funds. They limit that. You know, they don't want you to earn too much investment income on these funds. So they'll limit that, and they'll put an arbitrage fee against the district. So we don't want to get there. And of course, we have an investment company, MOCAP, that will monitor that for us on the general obligation bond. And for the charter schools, we have MOSIP. They will monitor that for us. That arbitrage, that's with their expertise, that's what they do, and they will let us know.
Yeah. And that's also the reason why we are taking the
We're
issuances
staggering.
in smaller amounts. So we're going through 3 different issuances for these so that we can have our architects, our CMs, and our owners rep, they're doing schedule and project validation. So in all scenarios, we're drawing down enough money that we can put to direct use with a reasonable expectation that it will be spent within the allocated time.
So that's why I need to know, when do we need the money? So
That's
have
a daily question.
474, that's what I'm always asking. We have 474 million that the bond passed. 50 we know went to charter schools, and the board just approved that last Wednesday. We'll get those funds November 4th. The 60 million was our first draw, so we're at 110. So the next 2, we don't want to take too many draws, because every time we take a draw, they charge us fees, like closing on your house. Every time you close on something, they're going to charge you additional fees. We want that money towards the project, so we're going to take 2 more draws, C and D. And I keep asking, so
Maybe
this,
E.
Yeah, it could be, but that will, of course, we would have fees on that if we do a 3rd draw. We have to pay broker's fees, closing fees, legal fees, all the good stuff you do in your closing statement. That's what you do when you draw down these funds. So that's why I always need to know the construction schedule, because I need to know, when do you need the money so we can pay the bills. So I'm like, is the phase 1 3 years? If we say 3 years, we start in 26, that means 29 for phase 2. You know, that's what I'm always asking them, the dates.
Yeah. Thank you, Aaron.
I'm coming your way. Got more questions because Aaron. Just kidding.
And maybe this was asked and answered already, or it was included, but when did the clock start ticking? Was it like the night of the ballot measure, or was it like when does that clock start?
When the district actually receives a fund, so at the point of issuance. Aaron, you want to talk through that 3-month window from?
So we have a calendar of events when we start to draw. We have a 3 months, so we have to go through S&P rating, so we can know what our bond rating is. We have a really good bond rating because we have a good reserve level for the Kansas City School District. Our accreditation, we're in good standing. So we had a AA minus, so that's pretty good. So we have a very good interest rate. We, in fact, sold them at a premium. We have 9 bidders on each issuance. We've had 9 bidders bid on our bonds, so we had a really good sale. And so that takes about 3 months from the start to finish to get the funds. So that's why I need to know the dates, so I know how to start that clock to get those funds. So it starts when, like, we're getting the charter November 4th. It'll start November 4th when we get those from the bank. We'll get the proceeds from the bank. So the clock started for our 60 billion. We got those in September. Yeah. So it started from September 16th, that 3-year period. So they're monitoring that right now. So.
And then, Courtney, if you want to get right here.
So just to clarify, for each issuance, there's a 3-year deadline. Okay,
Yes.
got it. Okay.
Yes.
It's not total.
Yes.
Yes, it's
So it's
Thank you
staggered.
for that.
That's why we are
Each
phasing it.
issuance.
So we really, like when you see phase 1, I kind of want dates above it so I know what those dates are. We're going to do that.
Hi, I am wondering, initial surveys I've seen were kind of really broad, what do you envision for the district, right? And then more funneling, what do you see for your school? And then now we have more of a dollar amount from there. I'm wondering if those scope reports, I'm forgetting the exact wording, that are coming, is that the way to really start understanding how to have a tangible feedback conversation? The last engagement we had I'm in a district-wide school, there was a total dollar amount, but that we know there's a bunch of it locked up in sort of key infrastructure building needs. So effectively, it's not subject to our input, which is fair. But then, teachers and principals should be driving. So I just want to make sure, where's the information so that what we're asking for is an authentic engagement with more information, so the feedback you're getting actually mirrors reality rather than feeling like you're saying the same thing with not any more information.
Yeah, I'll take the technical aspect and you can take the engagement. So part of the work that we've been doing this summer around that defining the scope is we've asked our partners here to also put pricing to that. So when we come back out and say, hey, the dollars that we're seeking feedback on, whether it's the 2 million reference or whatever that amount is, you'll have items with associated costs from that, so there could be a level of prioritization so that we can identify what the consensus are or the emergent trends are within those dollars amount, specific to your school.
That's what I was referring to in that very first meeting. So that budget prioritization survey, that's exactly what Jordan was talking about. You'll see projects, and then you'll see actual prices next to them, so you determine based on your allotment what you want to see in your school. Good question.
I was trying to answer my own question online, but I was too slow. So, for the Woodland Early Learning location, is that building going to be raised and something entirely new put in its place? Or are we adding on? What is happening with that site is my ultimate question.
Yeah, so Woodland would be a new construction right there at the site. A Woodland Empowerment Campus. So it will mirror what we're doing at the King the campus. It'll be a similar setup at the Woodland site, but specific and customized to the needs of that community.
So that building will be no more?
Correct.
My question is about budget as well. So thinking about inflation and tariffs and increasing costs, 5 million this year will stretch farther than 5 million in 28. So can you speak to what that means?
Yes, so I'll ask Corey to come up. He has been working closely with us on the budget development process, but in short answer is that we have done some escalation out based on inflation that we've incorporated within our scope allocations, but I'll let you give the technical.
You hit it pretty good already, but it's really we're tracking the costs and we're projecting what the cost will be when that project goes online. and really aligning the scopes with the budget to meet that essentially that new number. Each year we track that and see where's the current cost at and how it gets adjusted. We've seen it slow down here recently, and we're hoping we can find a happy medium and keep a slow pace and track and see what it's going to be in 28 when those projects are going online.
I have a very specific question around Hale Cook, because according to the engagement timeline, we're looking at in the next couple months engaging with the Hale Cook community, and then moving potentially into construction in the summer. So that seems like a pretty aggressive timeline, and just wanted to understand, particularly also if I'm a Hale Cook parent, there's other Hale Cook parents here, if we're trying to bring together design advisory teams for Hale Cook in the next, 6 to 9 months. Just maybe, I know this is very specific to that school, but it might be helpful to others as we talk about these really aggressive timelines.
Yeah. So yes and yes, you are going to get a design advisory team. We've actually already spoken with your principal. So when we open, we're going to push it to you all, really push it at that November 13th meeting. That'll be like that, well, there's the clicker. That'll be that first initial kind of conversation. And then we'll have your design team, hopefully they'll be put up by the end of the semester. That'd be really nice if we could get that done and established. And then continue to come back before construction would start next summer. But I agree, extremely, extremely aggressive. Unfortunately, with the bond passing in April and then us really refining scopes over the summer, those phase ones are gonna get pushed, if we're just being honest. But you still deserve to have a design advisory team. You still deserve to have a lot of input into design. And so they're gonna make sure that you are able to do that. The good thing is that design advisory team will also meet consistently. So it's not just a one-time thing, a two-time thing. You all can meet consistently and then report back to your school community. So it's not a one-time thing. It'll continue over time.
Tiffany?
So I'm going to tag on to Ashley's comments because I'm just now learning that the Hale Cook meeting is the 13th, which is stacked on a bunch of other community things. So is that our only shot in this November-December timeframe to participate in a meeting?
It's not. We actually scheduled that with the principal of Hale Cook. That's the current PTA meeting. And so I asked, hey, we already know you're going to get a large group of families. Does it make sense to go ahead and tack onto that to see if we can get some folks? She said yes. So I believe she's met with the PTA coordinators. They're going to shorten their meeting to 30 minutes, and then we'll take on after that to kind of get that general update. But it's not the only time. Once we do the application, once we get the survey, that information can still get processed and information can still get sent out. But that's the date as of now, based on availability of the school.
So the only meeting right now in this format for Hale Cook is centered around the PTA, not the community at large.
So we'll invite the community to that. That's just a good base of getting families. So just to make sure that we had a date that we knew the site was already open, we knew families were gonna be there, we can still open it up to attend. So we can say on the flyer, which we're working on now, PTA meeting from 5 to 6 or 6 to 6:30, 6:30 to 8 or 6:30 to 7. That's when the community conversation can take place around the Hale Cook Bond. We'll also come back and do staff engagements. Okay. We'll also do some staff inclusive meetings as well to have conversation with those that work there. And I didn't hear your feedback. DAT. Oh, sorry. And we'll also do some additional neighborhood association meetings outside of district advisory team.
Whose role is it to work with the city on permits? Speaking specifically about our school, getting a learning pod took extremely long, and we were always told it was because of the city permits. So who gets to have that liaison piece?
That will be us on this team. So we've already had one initial meeting with the city, but establishing a routine cadence with the planning and permitting department is key for us. And there was a lot of fun lessons learned through that special use process for that temporary module that's out there. But thank you. All right, well, you all are great people, and we certainly appreciate your engagement. We'll stick around. We're not going to run out the door. So if there are any school-specific things that you want to further discuss, please just grab us. But again, thank you all for coming out to this meeting and sharing.
And these slides will be available on the website, as well as some answers to your frequently asked questions. And so we'll put it in the upcoming newsletter and some communications when the information will be available.
And it was being live streamed, which means it's recorded. So if you have folks that couldn't attend today, we can shoot it out too.